But for those of you who are new, clearing it's, I don't know, it's so simple that I tell people in workshops it's going to take you years to understand. We had a lady come to a long program we did a few years ago in Vietnam, and after a few years, after that workshop, she wrote to me and said, "Ah, look, I finally understand what you were talking about. During the workshop in Vietnam, I understood intellectually, but it's only with practice that I'm beginning to understand what you were talking about on a heart level." And so, intellectually, it's very simple to understand because the information is very down to earth, very acceptable to most people because it makes so much sense. But to actually practice it is a whole new ball game. The basis, I guess, for clearing is that we begin to notice what's going on in our lives. We begin to notice how we're feeling. We begin to notice how the body changes in different circumstances. And then we, as a result of that, understand why the body's changing, what's causing it to change, and then what we can do about stopping that process. Because I think it's pretty obvious to most people that wherever we give our attention, wherever we give energy, that creates our reality. For most part, we're doing this without conscious awareness. That's why sort of stuff happens that we would rather perhaps didn't happen, or we get challenged, or we find relationships get uncomfortable. We find health issues or money issues, whatever, that give us a hard time. It's because all of this subconscious conditioning is just as much responsible for creating the world we live in as the hopes or the desires. The trick is to understand what's going on with the body when the chemistry in the body changes. It's generally a signal that some external stimuli, or what can be understood at the moment as external stimuli, has changed how the body's feeling due to simple chemical reaction. A lot of people don't notice that, although some, of course, when the changes are quite substantial, quite intense, it's very easy to notice it. But the issue most people face when they do notice it is that they take it personally, they take it seriously. If you think you're upset, where you say, "Now I'm upset," "Now I'm angry," "Now I'm sad," blah de blah. And of course, the more you say that, the more you hold yourself in that place, the more energy you give to that particular feeling, the more intense it's going to become. And so it never actually goes away on a cellular level. You've always got the potential for various feelings that can be very debilitating and very intense, all arising without your conscious participation. And that's why we have this struggle, and that's why we attend workshops, and that's why we do all sorts of stuff, spend lots of money trying to find answers, trying to find greater peace, greater happiness, greater health, greater wealth, whatever it is that we're looking for. And I've just posted an article, actually I just sent it off to to get posted on the new Facebook page about all of this stuff, about how constantly looking for more. This search, this drive that we have to look for peace, and for many of us in the early parts of the journey, I know for me it was, it's an external search. We look outside of the self. Travelled the world several times. I was content, but there was this underlying sort of drive to find out what the hell was going on. The clearing, as we understand what's happening and why, we can see a lot of the subconscious conditioning that arises. But normally when we identify with phenomena, we're in a situation of polarized consciousness, which means we tend to blame somebody else for our particular state. we blame somebody else for how we're feeling, for, whatever. And it's always somebody else's fault. This is a common issue from most people, that the problems all arise because of someone else. And all the time the problems arise because of someone else, we're not going to be actually able to find the peace of mind that we're searching for. We're not going to be able to find the happiness. We're not going to be able to find the state of wealth, the state of relationship, whatever that we're looking for, because this external charge that arises, this conflict, becomes an issue that is symptomatic of the internal state of how we're living, how we're working internally. If we are in conflict internally, then we'll see it outside. All the time we see the conflict outside and we blame others for that state of conflict that we find ourselves in, then we're a part of the problem, because we're actually adding energy to conflict, which has arisen within us, often because of just being born human. I mean, there doesn't have to be any other reason. The Buddhists, I seem to recall in some of their teachings, say that the moment we're born into the physical world, we literally lose our mind. We forget who we are, we forget our true nature. And all the time we're forgetting this, we're taking the body seriously, we're taking the personality personally seriously, we add charge instead of releasing charge. And all the time we're adding charge to the physical system, then we're going to experience the results of that charge. We're going to experience the manifesting reality. And this is very, very simple, very, very basic, but it underlies all that we do in clearing. I know some of you, I can recognize names, are going to be seeing me in Europe when I come over in March and April, when we'll be looking at all of this stuff in greater detail. But if we don't begin to realize what is really going on, if we continue to try and deal with the manifesting reality, if we wave our flags, if we stand on soapboxes, if we have a cause in particular that we fight for, if we feel there's injustice in the world, if we feel we're victims, if we feel we're marginalized or whatever, then that feeling can only arise because of a misunderstanding of the true nature of who we are. But it's from within this misunderstanding that we try to resolve the problem. Because Einstein, amongst others, said that we can't, solve a problem from within the structure or the framework or the paradigm, belief pattern that created the problem in the first place. And yet we still try. We might think we're, sort of stepping outside of the box, but you see, the box is contained, the box of the personality is contained within a larger box, which is collective personality. And no one's too willing to step outside of that for fear of total ostracization, excommunication, for feeling abandoned, being left. And there's all sorts of emotions that go along with it. And again, these are all a misunderstanding of the true nature of mind, but because we are lost in the mind, we try to find the answers from within that lost space. So, as I say, the work is very simple. It's simply about not giving energy to that which we notice, and we start where we start. I've got a bunch of people who are listening to me at the moment. I get lots of people coming through workshops. I've got no idea where anybody's at. I mean, it's impossible to say or to judge, where their understanding is at. And so rather than even begin to go there to try to understand where individuals might be at, people start where they're at. I mean, whatever they understand, whatever they hear in a workshop, whatever they hear in a talk, they will move on from that place. And so some people get this very, very quickly and able to practice it very, very quickly. Some people, take a little bit longer. But that's just the nature of, being human. I mean, as we understand better what's going on, so it becomes easier and easier to actually let go. I had an email this morning before I started this from a lady in Switzerland who's been doing the work for a while, and she was flicking through, my last book, and was being reminded that she knows this stuff, she's doing this stuff, she's actually practicing it. So what's happened is over the years that she's been practicing, this has become second nature. And so the more you practice, the less you need to practice. The more you practice, the more you become. The more you become this a different state, this more conscious, more aware state. So the less you give energy to stuff that you notice. And of course, when you stop giving energy to it, eventually it will fall away. So if you're seeing life as some sort of karmic journey, this is another very, very simple way to explain what's going on. If every moment of your physical existence is karmic, it's driven by a charge, a karmic charge, whether you're conscious of that charge or not, this charge is manifesting all around you all of the time. What most people do when confronted with this sort of charge is fight against it, is try to control it, to manipulate it, to avoid it, to run away or to shoot the heck out of it so that it doesn't bother you anymore. But that's failing to recognize that this charge is something of your own creation. And of course, as you give energy to the charge, and you can give energy to it by denying it, by running away, by blaming, by judging, then you're just creating the potential for more of that sort of situation to appear in your life in the future. And then, of course, if it appears again in your future and you react as you did in the past, then you're going to get more of the same. And so it goes. It's only by adding to charge, whether we do that consciously or unconsciously, and as I say, most people do it without conscious awareness, that we create or maintain the world that we live in. Any organization only exists because people give it power, because people vote for it, because people subscribe to it, because people believe in it. The moment you withdraw your power, when enough people withdraw your power, the organization will collapse. And you can see that in history. I mean, this has been going on for many, many years now. As one civilization, and I use that word in inverted commas very loosely because I don't know that I mean it's relative, I suppose, but I don't see many of the civilizations on this planet as being totally civilized. I think it's just relative to whoever else happens to be around at the time. But when you see one civilization moving in to conquer another, they gradually replace all of the original belief patterns that the person's held, religious patterns, spiritual patterns, social patterns, gradually imposing their own values on that society. So gradually the society's values fall away. And this has happened over and over again in many, many countries. It's certainly happened here in Australia. But we're not unique. It's happened all over the world over many, many hundreds and thousands of years as different civilizations have imposed their values on others. And that's all we're going through at the moment. We're going through almost a self-imposed state of mind that sees itself as better or worse, as separate or whatever. And of course, all the time that state of mind exists, there will be conflict all around us, whether that's around the world, whether that's around in our personal relationship, our work relationships, or on a physical level, whether we're going to be sick or not, how we deal with sickness when it shows up, what about our relationships. Everything hinges upon this understanding. And, I mean, it cannot be emphasized enough. And I don't think that without practicing the clearing, that it's going to become obvious to many people. The benefit of clearing, of course, is that the benefits are immediate. You don't have to wait till you die to go to heaven. You can go there tomorrow if you wish. The only thing stopping you from going to heaven is your own conditioned belief patterns, as Jung would call shadow, the backpack. We call it the backpack, Jung call it the shadow. This is all a subconscious conditioning that's happened to us over the years, over the possible lifetimes. This is all of the continued support that those belief patterns are given by society. And so, we have this deep sense of a need to belong. This is again a misunderstanding of the true nature of mind. We're already belonging. We don't have to belong to a group. Although, from hunter-gathering days, it was probably necessary that we belong to a group in order to survive. We may still belong to groups, but loosely. Try not to take it too seriously. Don't believe your group knows the answer, because they don't. They're just all like sheep herding together. There's safety in numbers, and it's just the ones around the edge that get picked off by the wolf pack. So, very, very simply, practice noticing what's going on in your life and understand why. And with the understanding, you can stop giving energy to that which you notice. When you stop giving energy to it, it gradually falls away. In that process, things might get a bit uncomfortable, because as you stop, suppressing various memories, various charge, other deeper memories or deeper charge will arise. And if you don't have the tools, if you don't have the awareness, if you don't have the ability to deal with it, with whatever arises in a different way, it can be quite overwhelming. There's a lot of meditation. I know that from a Buddhist point of view, a meditation you need when you start to be guided by someone who's well practiced in it, and they may call themselves a master or whatever, but someone who is very skilled in the meditation to help you through these dark periods of the journey, because otherwise you can get lost. I mean, I've seen it so many times on tropical beaches in my travels, people walking around with sort of signs up, no one home, out of body, out of mind, whatever, where they've gone too quickly into a different state, of awareness, without a roadmap that could lead them back. And so we do need the support of community. We do need someone to help us out along the way. I'm not one for creating codependency. I don't want anyone to become dependent upon me. But I do at the same time realize that some people are caught up, not some people, just about everybody, caught up to some degree or other in the delusional state that's arisen of this transition from spirit or consciousness into the physical body. And we tend to take ourselves a little bit too seriously. I guess, a lot of the time that I write, it's just about my current understanding, but there's a lot of my own experience that goes into this. I mean, my own journey, and I think that that makes a lot more sense than a lot of this other stuff that I'm talking about. I came from a relatively insecure childhood, very self-conscious, not one for feeling comfortable in my body at all, due to various conditioning in childhood or beyond. I mean, who knows? Who cares anymore? And people would say, you need to open your heart. And I'm going blah blah blah. My heart is open. How could it be anything but? I didn't understand, and from, of course, where I was at that particular time, my understanding that it was. And even if my understanding was different, that my heart wasn't actually open, I would never admit it, because, the moment someone confronts you, what is a normal reaction for someone who's in a separation, blame and judgment, of course, is that you become very defensive. And of course, if that person keeps pushing about this particular subject, defense moves very quickly into aggression when you start to attack. And you can attack verbally, emotionally, physically, whatever. All the time you're defending your point of view, even though your point of view has got no grounding in reality whatsoever. And I think that's what's so amusing about a lot of the stuff I read on Facebook these days, is that we are coming from a point of view where we think this other point of view is wrong, and of course all the time we think it's wrong and we try to do something about it. We're just adding energy to it by remaining polarized. Clearing is quite different. It's about embracing the charge wherever you find it, and of course the more people we can get to embrace more charge, then of course the collective charge is going to change as well, and we're going to create an opportunity for change to arise rather than forcing a revolution on which is again coming from a state of conflict. Anyway, my heart, according to me, was open, but according to a few other people, it wasn't. And then I discovered the clearing and started to develop it. And at first, it was space clearing that I was working with, and I was taught that we needed all these different devices to change the energy in space. But I found quite quickly that I didn't need all of this stuff to change the energy. I was actually changing it just by showing up. And of course, that was starting on to another journey altogether, because if I don't need anything and it's me changing it, well, what exactly is going on? And it was that sort of moment, quite a big moment in what was going on in my life that was really significant in bringing about change, because I started on this journey to try and discover what exactly was going on. And of course, the more I did that, the more I realized that we're all, it wasn't just me, we're all affecting the environment simply by showing up. But if we show up with shadow, if we show up with the subconscious conditioning, then that's going to impact upon the environment quite significantly. And of course, then that's going to eventually create conflict in not only in the environment, but in the people who live in the environment. So it wasn't just me, but everybody, was affecting the environment simply by who they were, by showing up. And so if we change who we are, but how do we do that? Of course, we seek ways to change, but if you're lost in the drama, most of the ways you'll seek are outside of the self. You'll seek different methods, different techniques, different processes, different rituals, different belief patterns, all in the expectation that they are going to give you the peace that you seek. But of course, they never do. They just delay the inevitable journey within for a little bit longer. I couldn't delay that journey because clearing was showing me what was going on in a very different way. But as you and me, as I certainly, continuing my story, began to notice that what was going on, particularly through my work with space clearing, how the body changed different environments, I was able to say, well, hang on a moment. If I just stand here on this particular energy spot for a moment and I feel, hot, I feel nauseous, I feel, got a headache, whatever. But if I take a couple of steps back, how do I feel now? Well, I feel fine now. The body is telling me it's okay now, but when I stand on that spot, it's feeling very distressed. And so I knew, through this exercise that the body is simply reacting to external phenomena. And if I no longer gave that external phenomena energy, then it would change. My body would change its relationship to that external energy. And this was huge, because if, it's very empowering to realize that, you are actually in control, even though there's only a small part of you, but that's a subject for another, weekend workshop. There's a small part of you, this who is actually making decisions, who is in charge, and just how much choice do we really have? But the little bit of choice that I did have was beginning to realize that the body was changing as a result of its environment. It was nothing to do with me at all. I didn't have to take it personally. And of course, as I stopped giving energy to that which I noticed, my body started to change. As my body changed, so it affected changes in the environment. So as the body came more into a more of a balanced state, more peaceful state, so that reflected in the environment where I lived or where I worked. Very, very liberating. And of course, from there I moved into the personal clearing, and this I found the same thing. If we're sitting in a workshop or you're sitting at home, whatever, and a friend comes to mind, or you're working with another person, and as that connection is formed in your consciousness, then a physical change occurs in the body. And anyway, noticing what's going on in my body as a result of this work, and understanding as I noticed that I didn't have to give energy to that which I was noticing, allowed me to feel a lot safer with what I was feeling. Because if you recognize that the feelings that are going on in the body are just the body reacting to external stimuli, you understand what that external stimuli is, you don't have to give it energy. And of course, as I stopped giving that energy, my own shadow started to show up more consciously. And you know your own shadow by the people you meet on the road and your response or reaction to them. And it's relative, it doesn't happen all at once. I think that would be a psychotic episode if it did, but it's sort of a gradual process of, as you feel safe feeling more, then you can feel more, and you don't take it personally. You stop judging what you previously judged as good or bad. And of course, a lot of the issues that you thought you had fall away because they just cease to be, because you're not giving them any more energy. And what I've noticed personally is that where I might have gone into, or where I certainly did go into, a reaction to a situation, generally with another person, now I'm noticing that as a vague sort of memory. The feeling still arises in the body, but it's much less intense. Because it's much less intense, because of all the clearing work I've done around these issues, I'm able to notice it because I've developed greater sensitivity, I've developed greater sense of personal safety noticing these things. I notice it before it becomes an issue, before the symptoms flare up as physical chemical changes in the body. So I've noticed that the body changes when an old condition arises, but because it's very subtle, because it's not intense, and because I notice it very quickly, I have a choice. I can, give it energy and go back to the old conditioning, the old patterning, as I used to do, or I can change my mind, stop giving it energy, walk away, think of something else, give my energy to something else. And so the things that I used to hang on to and sort of beat the life out of and get lost in a few years ago, most of them aren't even arising again anymore. And those few that do, those ones that were still very deep and very intense, are becoming less deep, less intense. And of course that leads to a much more peaceful existence. Not only does it lead to a much healthier internal reality, but it leads to a more healthy external reality as well. And the more people, as I said earlier, that can join us in this process, the more of the collective charge will be taken and drained. And the more the collective charge is taken and drained, the easier it's going to be for more people to see through this veil that they've taken as reality for so many years of their lives. I'm talking too much. Oh, there's a question from Caroline. What is my perspective on doing therapy? once upon a time, I judge a lot of that stuff as being a total waste of time. But it really depends upon the therapy. It depends upon the person who's seeking it. It depends upon the person who's practicing it. This is, as far as I can tell, make it up as you go along universe. Everything works. Everything meets a need. Everything has value. And of course, the more people who invest in a concept or belief, the more value it has, the more powerful it becomes. It may not be true, may not suit your values, but the more people that invest in something, the more powerful it becomes. And the sort of epidemic of Reiki, the sort of pandemic or whatever it was, took off and became very popular. And the more popular it has become, the more powerful it's become, of course, because a lot of people are giving their energy to it, believing that this is, doing good. And so it will do good. My main question would be, is what you're doing, whatever that may be, sustainable? Is it more icing on the cake? Is it decoration? Is it a distraction? Is it something that you've just gone to? I mean, therapy is invaluable, of course. Physiotherapy and getting the body back working again. And if someone can help you move beyond a particular block, I think everything's got its place. Everything's got a value. And if we see life as just this huge experience, a huge opportunity to experience so much, then we would go to all sorts of stuff and experience all sorts of things. I mean, I've experienced a huge amount of stuff on this planet in this lifetime. I mean, that was one of my major drives, is to experience just about as much as I could. And I don't think I've stopped yet. And it might include a lot of therapies, because along the way we all need a helping hand, and it depends who you are, where you're at, to who you reach out to for help. I would hope that there would come a point in time when, as an individual, it's no longer necessary to reach out to anybody because you've woken up to your true nature, and then of course no one can help you. You become you become the one that people seek help from. And so I've used a diagram in a pyramid. This might help understanding it from a different point of view, Caroline. I use a big pyramid and drawn on the board, and there's people inhabiting all layers of the pyramid, and people on all layers are one hand is reaching up and one hand is reaching down. So we're connecting with each other, we're helping each other without judgment, no matter where anybody is in this pyramid. So we're supporting everybody else wherever they are. We're also reaching up for support for ourselves. It's a big organism evolving. Anna Maria has asked, how does she know if she's not giving power to an issue or that she's denying it? You don't, basically. You don't know if you're giving power or if you're denying it, because if you were able to recognize that you're giving power to an issue or that you were denying it, there wouldn't be an issue anymore. We have trouble being objective about what's actually going on, because we are lost within what is going on. And so, of course, we're giving power to an issue. I mean, everybody that I've worked with, as far as private consults, Skype consults, or where they actually meet physically, has charged to clear every time I see them. The longer they leave between sessions, the bigger the charge. So and they're not aware this charge is building up. And if you mention it to some people, then they'll just deny it, because they're not conscious of the charge building up. And that's because the charge that is building up is still something that is arising as a result of subconscious conditioning or beliefs. And of course, the whole idea that something is subconscious means that it's beneath your conscious awareness. And if you're not conscious of it, you wouldn't know if you're giving power to an issue or that you're denying it. And then that's where earlier when I was saying about how, as a part of the process of the work, I started to feel safer with feelings. I was able to access a lot more feelings. And of course, the safer you feel with them, the less charge you allow to build up. And this is for this part of the journey, it's an effort to do something, to become more aware, to become more mindful, less judgmental. But as you stop giving energy to old emotions that arise, and it doesn't matter what they are, don't work on specific issues, certainly don't work on the really big challenging stuff, because you'll just get disheartened very quickly, and you'll stop practicing. So you work on all sorts of little stuff. The idea is that we change our relationship to the little stuff so that eventually the big stuff is little stuff, and of course then it doesn't matter anymore. So as you become more conscious of what's going on in the body and how it's responding, reacting, you develop a greater ability to choose whether you give energy to it or not. So the more you can choose, the more you're going to realize that you're not going to give power or you're not going to deny. We notice, and this is an interesting sort of take on this as well. If we give power to an issue, which is what we're doing all of the time, or we deny it, which is what we're doing all of the time, then it keeps showing up. That issue will keep showing up, and there's a very good indication that you're giving power to it if it shows up again tomorrow, next week, next year. If you're denying it, it's going to sneak up on you, and by the time that it does hit you, the energy will be so intense, you won't know what hit you. And then, of course, if you're lost in that particular chemical, that energy, that emotion, then you're lost. You can't be objective about that which you're lost in. So it's only a gradual process. But if you've been giving power to an issue, and as I was saying earlier on, some of my stuff, impatience was an issue for me. Self-respect, self-conscious, self-awareness. Feeling comfortable were all issues for me, and they kept showing up in relationship. But it was only as I developed the ability to feel safer with different feelings that I was able to notice all this stuff that was going on, that was showing up, and gradually start to step back. And so now these things just don't show up, which means that I haven't given power to what I used to give power to. So it's only through direct experience that we can begin to realize. I wouldn't be concerned about whether we're giving power to an issue or denying it simply because of this talk, because you've been doing it all of your life, and everybody around you has been doing it all of their lives, and everything's still going on. Stuff is still happening, and most people who are listening to this are still alive. So it hasn't been the biggest problem. But one of the things that certainly I've noticed as we practice the clearing, as we start to take the pressure off and we start to become more conscious of what's going on, one of the major issues that arises on the heels of that is fear, anxiety, bit trouble, don't want to do this. Ooh, what's going on here? Because we've brought something else into our conscious awareness with which we're not too familiar, and so. That which we're unsure of, that which we don't know about, that we fear. And so, of course, then fear is the issue. You've got to get through the fear. And that's where the psychosis comes in, because if you don't have support, if you don't have the tools or the awareness to get through the fear, you can get lost in it because you give energy to fear. And you do that, you give power to fear. You give power to anxiety. And a lot of that's happening on a subconscious level. If it's happening on a subconscious level, there is very little you can do about it. You can't change things if you don't even know they're happening, or you don't even know you're responsible. But as I say over and over again, as you practice, you start to feel safer with different feelings. The safer you feel, the easier it is to accept them, the less they'll show up in the future. And then you'll look back one day and say, "Whoa, this has stopped happening. This isn't happening to me anymore. Something must have changed." Of course, most people wouldn't give the credit to that to clearing. They just don't think about it and just find themselves in a different state. And it's the same with denying it. If we're denying something, if we stuff it in the backpack, in the shadow, because we don't want to deal with it, then it doesn't go away, of course, and it's going to show up one day. And that's what we're dealing with, I think, today, especially when we come to a workshop and we make conscious decisions and effort to change things, is that we've got this stuff that we've been carrying for years, possibly lifetimes, and all of a sudden we want to work with it, or begin working with it, or begin looking at it in a different way. And you're only going to notice what you feel safe noticing. So if you don't feel safe noticing stuff, then it's just not going to happen. You're not going to notice it, and if you don't notice it, you can't do anything about it. And we find that people still, they come to workshops, and they might have been to several workshops, mine or anybody else's, but they still, lost in the world of needing to do something to fix something. Clearing is not about doing anything or fixing anything. Clearing is about noticing and accepting. And in the accepting, we release the charge. But how do you know? Well, you know what shows up. If it keeps showing up in your life, you're either giving power to it or you're denying it. And if you're in judgment or in blame, and that keeps showing up, then one day, you'll come to sort of hear something like this or something else that's going to resonate with you, that you're going to think is going to have the answers, and you're going to follow that path until that path is exhausted, or you see through what's going on. Some of you who've worked with me before will know this, but some of you who haven't might find this interesting, that even by connecting through this medium and becoming a part of this webinar chat thing, stuff will happen. I mean, change will occur. And there's not much that we can do to stop that. It's just, if we continue, as most people do, with or without awareness, to put ourselves in a familiar surroundings, then those familiar surroundings are going to support a familiar way of being. We're not conscious of that, or we're not necessarily able to stay objective around that, because it's like a fish in water. You can't describe the water because you're in it. It's the same with the reality, the world we live in, which is one reason that space clearing is so important, because it helps to shift some of the patterns that are holding us subconsciously into past conditioning. But when you put yourself into a different environment, and this is why holidays are great, as long as you don't go to, the Costa Brava, if you're English, to try and get away from the English, and you go to the Costa Brava or Costa del Sol, and you're surrounded with English, or wherever the Dutch or the Swiss or the Germans or whatever the hell you are, go to get away from everything. If you surround yourself with the familiar, then it's not really a holiday, it's just more of the same, only in a different climate with food that's likely to make your stomach upset. Not worth the trouble, really. But to go away to a place that is not supporting of the old allows you to change. It not necessarily forces you, it doesn't make you change, it doesn't guarantee change. But if you move into a different environment, it's going to allow the body to change. If you go into an environment where there's few people, lots of nature, then that is very supportive for change. If you put yourself into a group of people, as in the workshop situation, whether that's with me or anybody else, then it's giving you an opportunity to change. People don't know you, they don't have the expectations of, of your friends and your family, and so that in itself allows you to change. But more so, if you can put yourself in an environment that is non-judgmental, that is open-hearted, very supportive, very compassionate, without having any preconceptions whatsoever, then that is guaranteed to bring about change. Whether that change is sustainable or not is a whole new question, because you might come away, for example, we've got a week's workshop in France in September, which is going to be looking at clearing and meditation. So it's going to be some quiet time, some clearing time, a very powerful week, surrounded by people who are all practicing non-judgment. So to the best of their ability, they're not judging, which then allows stuff to come up to change effortlessly. And having said that, you might feel very peaceful and sort of otherworldly and enlightened and whatever at the end of the week, but then you're going to go back to your family, your home, your job, and then you're going back to the previously familiar, which is going to just further reinforce all of those patterns. You won't be able to stay outside of that conditioning for long before you're dragged back in. And as you get dragged back in, you might begin to realize that this peaceful feeling is falling away. And it's falling away because your environment is supporting your old conditioning, which is why community with this work is so important. Whether you've got a group practicing in your hometown or whether you need to connect with people on Skype. We've got people around the world doing both. It's essential to support if you want to continue. And by noticing the change, you would notice that there's value in continuing. It's only by being supported with like-minded, like-hearted people that you can continue to progress. So keep that in mind. Just by putting yourself in a different environment, change will happen. Whether that change is sustainable depends upon basically who you are at any given point in time, your personality, how seriously you're taking life, how honest you are with the self, how judgmental you are, a whole bunch of stuff, which comes back to Anna Marie's question about, giving power to an issue or denying it. For the most part, we don't know we're doing that until we've removed ourselves from it and we can look at it objectively. But then the familiar reality, family, friends, work, environment, starts to suck you back in. And before you know it, you're just there again. Not completely there, because there's going to be a little part of you, a little spark that's been woken up and that sort of knows that it doesn't have to take it seriously. And so every now and again, this spark will turn into a bit of a flame and you'll practice. And of course, the more you can practice, the longer the changes will last, because you become the change. Right. Another question from Corrine. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Can you tell something about physical effects when clearing? Well, again, that's relative to who is doing the clearing or who is being cleared. When I offer a clearing, I never specify I'm going to work on any particular issue or level. Basically, clearing is about being available for whatever shows up, and sometimes that's physical and sometimes it's not. Sometimes I'll experience the symptoms of the people that I'm working with, sometimes not. Sometimes the people I'm working with will experience physical symptoms, sometimes not. A physical symptom can either be the result of trauma, accident to the body, or it can be the result of wrong thinking from a Buddhist point of view. Wrong thinking is not something that we're necessarily conscious of. It's part of the conditioning that occurs when we come into the physical form, We're conditioned by people who in their own turn were conditioned. We live and grow and develop in a society that's totally conditioned. So we become a part of that condition. We become very fearful and judgmental as a result of that conditioning. So consciousness is polarized, which means that on a physical level, on a cellular level, there's this almost a predisposition, or in homeopathy, a miasm, for a certain way of being, a certain predisposition, a certain preponderance for a certain way of being, or a certain way of thinking, certain way of reacting, certain emotional response. All the time, this predisposition, this conflict, potential for conflict exists on a cellular level. It's going to create physical problems that will eventually manifest, and this is without our conscious participation, of course. And so when we start to clear, what we're doing is we're sitting still for a moment and we're noticing. This is why the workshop in France will be so special, because it's combining the meditation, the sitting, walking meditation, guided meditation, with clearing that which presents and arises. So if you've got, on a cellular level, the potential, or you've had that potential for a long time, but without consciousness, as Anna Marie asked, you've been denying it, then that's created imbalance on a physical level. When you start to notice what's going on in the body, then that physical symptom may become obvious. If you react as you've done in the past, or you've been conditioned to react with fear or identification with the symptoms, then you're just adding energy to it. You're going to make it worse. You've got to be prepared to feel a lot and not take any of it seriously. I think I've cleared so much in my time, hospitals, and felt symptoms, and that most people would sort of take lifetimes to experience all of what I've felt in a couple of hours. And then you've got to be prepared to say, well, oh, this is a heart attack, but it isn't mine. And not be afraid of what might happen. Not get lost in giving energy to that which you're feeling. Just sort of be with it without giving it any charge. And of course it'll fall away. Or if it was your heart attack and you made a mistake, then you'll probably die. But you're going to do that sooner or later anyway. And if your number's on it, your number's on it. So I wouldn't worry too much about it at the moment. And when it happens, it's too late to worry. So just enjoy what's going on at the moment. I don't know if you had anything specific in mind, Colleen, when you asked about physical effects when clearing. Some of you who've experienced clearing before will have noticed that the person clearing might have a rather interesting reaction. Yawning a lot, eyes watering, nose running, are all classical symptoms in Qigong of the body detoxing. So that's the body processing information in a healthy way, which means it's not storing it, it's not building up charge, pressure on a physical level anymore. Some people burp a lot when they're clearing. And people who burp a lot generally had some sort of problem on in the digestive system. There's some weakness, some energy block there. I've recently started, well, not recently, but noticed recently with a lot of people I'm clearing in India, in Mumbai, that they cough a lot when they're clearing. Well, I call that the Mumbai clearing cough. And if you've lived in Mumbai, you'll know that the pollution is extreme, and it's hardly surprising that people have got throat issues and cough a lot over there. So there's always sort of some reason for what's going on and how the body's reacting. Mostly my yawning or tearing or nose running are all just pressure that I'm releasing on behalf of somebody else. And it's generally that layer of pressure, of stress, of charge that's accumulated since we last cleared. There's no obvious physical symptoms in that layer. That's just sort of gunk and pressure. And it's only after that layer that we'll start to notice physical symptoms showing up. Sometimes I'll notice them, sometimes the person I'm clearing will. Sometimes we both will. There's no guarantees about who's noticing what. We just notice what we notice, and to the best of our ability, don't give that which we notice any energy. Whew. All right. So with that, Corinne has experienced a lot of physical shocks, and I'm hoping that was during a clearing and not through some other therapy. But physical shocks during right, it was during a clearing. Good. So if you're being cleared and there's a lot of physical shocks going through, it's like if there's a like you get static electricity, and and she experienced them afterwards for quite a long time too. Can the symptoms be worse after clearing? I'm asked. Yes, they can, because it's like homeopathy. They sort of tend to bring the stuff to the surface, which is why you need support, and an understanding of the clearing helps as a part of the process, of course, because if you understand what's going on, you're not going to get lost in it or give it too much energy. Just come back for a moment to the physical shocks. If you've ever experienced static electricity, you touch a car or something metal and you get a jolt from the car, it's because there's electricity building up in the body, and then it's released through the static charge, the connection to the car and the grounding, the earthing of that particular situation. And there are ways to release the body, but some people's bodies sort of build up electrical charge very easily and very quickly, and they're always getting shocks. If that happens to be the case for you, you might want to soak your feet in a basin of sort of warm water with lots of salt and what is it called, bath salts or whatever it is you put in that. Can't remember. Come to me in a minute, and that'll help drain the charge as well. If the body is sort of storing this energy, then it needs to discharge energy. It's not healthy to. It's not Epsom salts. Thanks, Gillian. I'll read you a little bit out in a minute. It's like if the charge in the body isn't being released, then it's imbalance. There's this sort of pressure building up in different parts of the body, and the clearing can actually release that charge. And you might experience that charge as the release, like an electric shock releasing. If the clearing has created in you a safe environment where the body is starting to relax, then of course the shocks, like an earthquake, will continue. Aftershocks will continue as the body, gradually settles down and releases more of these charges. If you've got questions, more detailed questions about that, Corinne, I suggest you email me after we've finished or whatever. Back to Anya, can the symptoms be worse after a clearing? Well, yeah, as I said, if your system's been under stress for a long time, then when it's put into a safe environment, it starts to relax. It starts to relax. Stuff starts to become obvious, pops up, and because you become aware of it, and this is, I think, key to this whole, feeling of things being worse, because you become aware of what's going on. You sort of see things a little bit more clearly, and it becomes more obvious. And then you think, oh, this is going on. Okay. If the symptoms persist for a while after the clearing, I'd call the person you were working with and ask them to just give you another session, just 5 minutes on the phone or something, to help things settle down. Normally, in the years and years and years that I've been practicing this, and all of the feedback I've had from people who've been working with the clearing, I would say that most people don't get more than they can handle anyway. 99.9% of people wouldn't get more than they can handle. The only people who do are those people who are sort of still lost in sort of personality and ego, and think that, they've got to do something, and the more you think that, the more severe the symptoms will be, because, your wake-up call just becomes more and more intense. But if the symptoms do continue after a while, then again, email me or speak to whoever was doing the clearing. Gillian made a note attesting to the concept that lots of burping during clearing can be related to digestive issues. It's really been only a recent realization that her digestive system has been a weak link for most of her life, although the burping while clearing has been far less than it used to be for years now. Well, that's good. I'm not going to comment on why it's taking you so long to realize that, Gillian, but I'm sure you'll work it out. So Karine mentioned that I'm experiencing all of you now through the webinar. Well, yes, although of course I'm not able to pick out individuals. Picking out individuals moves into the area of judgment, and so it's all just happening, you know. Certainly, if I disappear from the screen, collapse on the floor, don't worry about it. Just sort of hang in there. I'll be recovering after a while. Andreas has asked, when clearing, releasing the charge, where is the charge going? Oh, that's an interesting one. I've been asked that a few times. Charge is accumulated as a result of being human, but there's nothing actually there. It's like it sort of could be said, goes back to oneness. You know, charge is seen as something external to the self, something is separate from the self. And when we release that charge, meaning it's imagine the heart and superimpose over the heart the golden mean, the spiral, the sacred architecture. That spiral allows all waveforms to coexist simultaneously without creating conflict. Normally what happens with waveforms where they're judged, you know, you send a waveform out because of who you are, complex, yes, but you send it out, and then someone reacts to that waveform, then it creates a third entity, called an interfering waveform, which is the way the world is created, maintained, sustained. If you keep doing that, if you keep sending out stuff and people keep reacting, responding to it, you create around you all of these interfering waveforms which create the world you live in. Okay? Created out of nothing, created out of the word, created out of energy, of consciousness. When you stop judging that which you experience, you allow that waveform to coexist with all other waveforms, so you're not sending it back, so you're not creating more charge, but you're simply allowing all of the waveforms to collapse and create a more peaceful state. So it's not like energy sort of disappearing, it's not like it's been created or destroyed, it just is energy but changes form. So instead of creating more chaos, more conflict, we allow that energy to collapse into the heart. This is what was meant by the open heart, which I was told a long time ago, and I've been on a journey of opening that now for many, many years. But as the heart allows all of those waveforms to coexist, they collapse, the waveforms collapse, then the charge just dissipates into the greater consciousness, but having been accepted as part of the whole rather than seen as something separate. Of course, it can never be anything separate, it's just a concept of the point of view or belief pattern of the individual who's experiencing it. There's a question from Debbie in New Jersey. They moved to New York, I can't remember. Which, with respect to Wi-Fi, which is everywhere, how often should we shield ourselves? Wi-Fi, microwave radiation can be very, very hostile. It can be very hard energy to accommodate. A lot of people who come to workshops have a great sensitivity to Wi-Fi and to microwave radiation, cell phones, microwave ovens, etc. So now we're talking about shielding the self. I never do that, Debbie. I'd never shield myself. What I do instead is, and I have been doing this for years, is through clearing, through working with phones, Wi-Fi, microwaves, whatever, through consciously opening, and don't try this on your own if you haven't had experience with the work, because it can make you feel very uncomfortable, depending on your own sensitivity to this information, the microwave and the cell phones, etc., not what I'm talking about. Through the years that I've been practicing, I've changed my relationship to the information. And that does take time, it does take practice, because if you're already behind the 8 ball as regards to this sort of information goes, as microwave stuff goes, as Wi-Fi, then your body's going to be super sensitive, and it's going to be a long, slow road for you to re-educate the body. But as I've re-educated the body, so my tolerance or my ability to be in a Wi-Fi area or a next to a cell phone, whatever, has grown. So then it doesn't become a problem. I don't have to clear myself. So perhaps instead of asking how often you should clear yourself, Debbie, ask how often should I clear my relationship to Wi-Fi and cell phones? And my answer to that would be a couple of minutes in the morning and a couple of minutes in the afternoon every day, until you can do 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the afternoon, clearing around this technology. So you change your relationship. As you change your relationship, so you can support the change for others. So you can support reducing the negative effects, so you can do this for Pawan and the kids by doing it for yourself. But in order to do it for others, you first have to do it for yourself. Okay? Another question from Anna Marie. Is it possible to clear a dog that is stressed because he has not enough exercise? Well, if that's the reason that the dog is stressed, then I think obviously the thing is there. Yes, Gillian, I'll come in a minute. I think if the dog is not having enough exercise, then exercise would be the key, of course. But yes, I mean, if there's a build-up of charge, I mean, it's a dog's nature to get exercise anyway, and it shouldn't be denied it. But if there's circumstances that don't permit it, then certainly clear the dog of stress. I've cleared lots of dogs and horses and cattle and all sorts of things, and they all seem to benefit. It's fun when you're clearing horses because they yawn as well. I tried to give a brief overview, but then after when it all said and done, most of the time was just words. It's about the practice that's important. And it's only through practice that you'll begin to realize the benefits. And the benefits are huge. They're beyond your imagining, because your imaginings are limited to your current perceptions. And it's only when you practice that, of course, that you start to experience it all for yourself. And then when you do start to experience it just for yourself, as we've had, I mean, we've had 3, 4 people come in, 5 people come into the meeting who've done a lot of work before, and they're still practicing. And I'm sure if we asked them, they would all give some feedback about their own experience. One of the few totally win-win situations out there. So as you clear yourself more, so you support others, and as you clear others, so you support yourself. Okay, till next time, I'm going to stop recording and say goodbye. Thanks for joining us.